So hello and welcome to Steps to Maths, and today in probability we're going to be continuing talking about the fundamental principle of counting, why we were looking at the fundamental principle of counting and how it applies to probability. So the reason we're looking at it is because we need to be able to count really well in probability. And just to, for example, if we wanted to find the probability for an equally likely outcomes. So we're looking at equally likely outcomes. So the probability of a favourable outcome occurring is the number, the number of favourable outcomes over the total possible outcomes. So in order to be able to count how many outcomes there were, we use the fundamental principle of counting. Let's have a look at a series of events. 3 sequential events. Event 1. A coin is thrown, so we can get a heads or a tails, which is 2 possible outcomes. Event 2, we throw a die. We can get the numbers 1 to 6, so that's 6 possible outcomes. Event 3, we choose a ball at random from a bag which contains 3 green and 4 black marbles. So there are 7 possible outcomes we have there, any of the green marbles or any of the black marbles. Of course, we remember from the fundamental principle of counting that the total outcomes is 2 by 6 by 7 equals 84 possible outcomes. Now we need to know this because when we're calculating probability, we need to know the total possible outcomes and we need to know the total number of favourable outcomes. So what is a favourable outcome? That depends on what you actually want. Anything that goes in your favour. So imagine we threw a coin, threw a dice and picked a ball at random and you won a prize if we got a heads and a green ball. So long as a heads and a green ball came up as our final outcome, one of these 84 possible outcomes, then we would win a prize. So a heads and a green ball is a favourable outcome. So let's have a look. Event 1. We want to get a heads. That is one outcome. We have to have heads. Event 2. Any of these is good. So that's 6 outcomes that are favourable to us. Any of these outcomes we consider to be favourable. So we're following the same events, we're following all the same paths in the tree, we're looking at all these 84 possible outcomes and we want to know which ones are favourable to us. Favourable, heads, favourable, any of these. Favourable, event 3 has to be green. That's 3 outcomes. So the number of favourable outcomes we know from the fundamental principle of counting is 1 by 6 by 18. 1 by 6 by 3, which is 18 altogether. Okay, I was jumping ahead a bit there. So there are 18 favourable outcomes. Remember the systematic listing, if you listed all 84 possible outcomes, 18 of them would have a heads and a green ball. So there are 18 favourable outcomes out of those total of 84 possible outcomes. So our probability of a favourable outcome, which means our chances of winning, is 18 out of 84. So if we played the game, we would expect that out of every 84 games, we would expect to win approximately 18. Okay, so that's pretty much how you calculate probability for equally likely outcomes. So in our systematic listing on our tree of diagrams, if every path was equally likely, the probability of a favourable outcome is the number of favourable outcomes over the total possible number of outcomes. And we do our counting using the fundamental principle of counting. And I'm going to give you a couple of questions that's going to ask you to find the probability. A lot of those questions are going to be relatively easy questions. There's only going to be one event. with perhaps, imagine that event was picking a ball from a bag with 3 green, 4 blue, and 5 black marbles. That is a total of 12 outcomes. And then we said our favourable outcome, we win a prize if we pick a blue. That's 4 outcomes. So our probability of a favourable outcome, meaning we win, is 4 out of 12. So if out of every 12 times that we play this event, we figure about 4 of them will be in our favour, that we'll pick a blue. Okay, that's an approximate sort of thing. But this is how you calculate it. So sometimes the questions will be more complex. If there's multiple events, if there's sequential events, you use the fundamental principle of counting. For single events, it's a little bit easier, but I will be asking you questions for single events, and then the next day I will be asking for multiple events. So there'll probably be no video for the next day on this one, just a little reminder of how this is calculated. Okay, so have a go at that. Have a go at answering the questions on probability. You're going to be writing them as a fraction. So when you're typing them in, you'll probably be asked to put them in as something like 4/12, just so you can type them in. Okay, but that will be explained in the question. Okay, so the best of luck with that. Enjoy.